Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll attempt to be brief. I don't want to be standing between lunch and hearing about cancer and or oncology. Just to share a few things and perspective, having been associated with the trust for about 7 odd years as managing trustee and with the group for almost 20 years, what one has realized was there are significant extent of information asymmetries in managing cancer, awareness about cancer, leave alone treating about cancer. For example, in this month of February, perhaps everyone from the age of probably 4 or even slightly older, if one were to give that benefit of experience, would know about what February 14th means. Right? But not many might know as to what relevance February 4th is. February 4th happens to be World Cancer Day. February 14th, we know what that day is or symbolizes. Secondly, much of the traditional investments or awareness about cancer has always been on the illness side of things. In a sense, even in the trust, having been pioneers in establishing cancer centers, we have had several of them. By the time, unfortunately, when a person reaches a cancer center, 7 out of 10 times it's already too late. We end up doing palliative or end-of-life treatments. Whereas, while not many might know or aware, if detected early, the chances of survival are close to 70% as compared to what we see 30 or 35% odd today. Secondly, the way we have historically looked at cancer is like an extreme super specialty. We have often not embedded or embraced it as part of a general medicine protocol. Whereas for some of the common cancers like say head and neck, breast, cervical, lung and perhaps colorectal can be managed and integrated as part of a general workflow in a community setting. As an illustration, many dentists, we often assume that a person joining dentistry has joined because he or she has not got a higher rank in a NEET exam, instead of doing MBBS has ended up with a BDS, whereas 3 out of the 4 years of his own study is exactly the same as part of a medical protocol. And in many ways, a dentist is much more attuned to picking up those signs and symptoms of a precancerous oral leukoplakia and helping or navigating them to the rest of the journey. Similarly, many gynecologists can pick up, screen and treat early stage symptoms of a potential cervical and or a breast cancer, except they're not part of the value chain or the proposition. Many pulmonologists often misdiagnose a potential symptom of a lung cancer as a tuberculosis and or a chest infection. And we see that asymmetries all along the navigation pathways. And even within cancer, while we broadly break that up into 3 odd disciplines ranging from a surgical protocol to a medical oncology and or a chemotherapy protocol and or a radiation protocol, in many ways these 3 things are often at conflict with each other or perceived to be conflict with each other and don't integrate or assimilate with each other. So what we therefore need and have realized is how can we unbundle the knowledge part of care vis-a-vis a delivery system on the back of a curated knowledge hierarchy which can be delivered through technology. And we don't need to look well beyond our own systems in India, which we have transformed in, say, a banking, fintech, retail, and or aviation in the last decade or two, to take those learnings and apply them into a somewhat complex specialty like oncology. I happened to work with Mr. Tata for several years, and he used to say he's a pilot by training. And he mentioned that when he was learning the skills of being a pilot, he needed to learn a number of things ranging from understanding of weather to instrumentation to technology to a whole range of other mechanical and engineering designs. Today, 90 or 95% of a pilot training is done in a simulator, with literally the last part of it done as a check ride when you actually sit in a cockpit. And today, if your airport has an instrument landing facility and the aircraft has an ILS, you can literally land as an autopilot without doing much with a fly-by-wire or an equivalent technologies. 20 years ago, as we all know, banking used to be that way. When I used to go to I won't name the public sector bank, you wait for literally several hours or at times often days to update your passbook or look at whether your pension has come into your account or not. Today there are more Instagram or Facebook accounts than passbook accounts. Many youngsters haven't never visited a bank or never seen what a passbook is in their own journey. We have seen that in several other industries, except when it comes to healthcare, we are often spooked by the extent of information asymmetry. While we can't do it for all parts of healthcare, but certainly for chronic diseases, especially things like cancer, where no person has ever reached a cancer center saying, look, I am dying, treat me today. It's never happened, neither in India nor anywhere in the world. So what one might effectively need is access to that expertise, not necessarily the physical presence of that expert. Therefore, unbundling makes a significant difference in this navigation pathway. Last but not the least, one significant challenge and therefore an opportunity that we see out here is, we have often again, when it comes to things like this, we have looked at it like a traditional illness protocol, not like a wellness protocol. Our own automotive, I'm sure half or most of you would have been riding a Mercedes S-Class, being Rotarians of such eminence in a very prominent district. Every quarter we ensure that our car is sent to a service station and has its own maintenance. The air is checked and fuel is put in one form or the other. But when it comes to our own human body, I'm not really sure as to how many of us annually go through a mandatory health checkup. And even if we undertake a mandatory health checkup, what are the signs and symptoms of certain cancer markers that we insist a concerned clinician or a gynecologist, as the case might be, to go through this particular process. And organizations like Rotary have a huge role to play. Again, for some of the districts or Rotarians who may or may not be aware, the country's apex cancer center in North India, which is the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, is formerly known as the Rotary Cancer Center. It is not an All India Institute of Medical Sciences Cancer Center. Many of the screening programs which many of the non-profits do, Rotary has been a big supporter in terms of their community outreach activities by virtue of either donating a mobile van or a mammogram or funding support for human resources or other initiatives. Thirdly, what organizations like yourselves bring in is not necessarily the money. Money is the last and the least part of it. The collective intellectual horsepower that you bring in by virtue of your competence in a range of other disciplines. Second, the convening power. Third, the intent. Lastly, but the competitiveness across the various clubs and or the districts in wanting to make a difference. So if we channel that competitiveness, the collaborative, in a spirit of collaboration to solve a problem potentially at scale and definitely in societal interest, much more can be achieved than what we have currently only nibbling the surface of it. And mind you, challenges like this are, only two countries have such a challenge, which is India and China. By any number that you take, we are globally number one or number two in terms of a disease burden across disciplines. And if we don't, or perhaps not address it like a public health issue, a couple of years ago, the statistics of people potentially at risk of cancer was 1 in 10. This year's numbers on Global Can were indicating 1 in 8. In the next 15 years, this number is going to be 1 in 4. Whether we like it or not, each and every one in our own family or in the neighborhood will have some risk or the other in our lifetime. This is real. And unless we ensure that we build in a participatory framework, literally like, I won't name, literally some of the parties have codified a methodology of literally getting a voter page and ensuring the person turns up at a booth in order to ensure he or she casts his vote in one form or the other. How do we take some of those design principles for addressing a societal cause is our endeavor. That's in brief, and grateful for the opportunity of being present here and communicating and articulating and sharing and suggesting the importance of cancer screening and or early detection, and look forward to a collaborative framework of working together. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for such a vibrating event happening over the stage.